Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Ophidian, Desolate, out July 16th on Season of Mist. This album has 10 tracks, 39 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are an Icelandic technical death metal band. Now this album is really well organized. It allows the record to have playability, fluidity. The songs are very well interconnected. Overall, really allowing the album to have a sense of purpose. Having said that, it's still very versatile as well. It's a record that, while having some songs that really need to be where they are within the track listing, within the overall structure, there's other songs that you can move around and it wouldn't hurt the playability, it wouldn't hurt the overall fluidity of this record. For an album that has this kind of sound, very robust, very heavy presence, having this sort of versatility and still being very well organized at the same time, it's really something that the listener needs. We need to be able to be in charge, be in control of our experience of the album and not necessarily be dictated in terms of how we're going to listen to it. Once you get into the sound, this is perhaps where a little bit of the wheels come off. I like the overall sound in terms of how robust, in terms of how heavy, how big it is. This is a big sounding record across every single track. It really pounds you. It's in your face, it has a lot of intensity, it has a lot of aggression, like I said, a lot of heaviness. The technical side muddies the waters ever so slightly. Sometimes it feels like if there's too much coming at you, there is no real intent and purpose, there's no real direction. So the technical side of the record really loses a little bit of itself within itself. And that for me was a little bit of a problem. There was just so many pieces to this puzzle that was really hard for me to put the puzzle together. I needed it to be a little bit more streamlined. I needed it to be a little bit more straightforward in terms of what it's giving to the song, in terms of what it's doing, and what is the final purpose of having it. Sometimes too much of a good thing hurts the overall perception that you have of the record, because it just starts to feel a little bit lost within it. You start to feel like you don't really have a grasp in terms of what's happening around you, and then you start to disconnect from the record. That's exactly what happened to me within this album. Now, within that soundscape, there are two elements that become the cornerstones of what this record has to offer from the technical side and from that heaviness volume side, and that is the drums and guitars. I love the drums overall on this album. There is nothing about the drums on this record that I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed the tone, I enjoyed the delivery, I enjoyed the sound, the way it was recorded, the heaviness, how strong they are, how much of a heartbeat they become. They really are the heartbeat of this album. They ground the record, but they also move the album forward. They also give the album substance. They also give the album heaviness, movement. They just become such an important element that you really gravitate to what they're doing within the track in order for you to get a little bit of a sense of balance within the songs. On the other side, you have the guitars. I like the technical ability that they demonstrate throughout this record. I really like the sound. I like the execution. I just don't like necessarily how they intertwine with the rest of the construction of the song. Sometimes they felt like add-ons, or they felt like they were walking a little bit besides the song itself. And once again, there were a few times where they muddied the waters a little bit and they took a little bit out of the overall essence of the song, because they took me on a completely different path, losing me in that path and not really bringing me back to my original starting point. So while I enjoy the technicality of the execution, I didn't enjoy the execution within the songs itself in terms of where it was placed and how it was incorporated with the rest of the tracks. On top of this, you have the vocals. The vocals were very consistent. There are some nuances throughout the record, but it's pretty much a one-size-fits-all. The nuances are there, and they're there just to give you enough of a change here and there, but not enough to really change the overall perception that you have by the time you reach the end of the record. The vocals really partner well with the drums in order to give that heaviness, in order to give that substance, in order to spread the sound, to make it feel a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit more compact. Overall, this is an interesting record because it has a lot of qualities to it. It just needed to be a little bit more streamlined. I think that's the key word for this album. I think sometimes you try to do too much and you get lost a little bit in it, and you start to lose a little bit of track of what the song was all about and what I was trying to achieve with that specific song. So I felt like this was an album that kind of had a little bit of that. It lacked a little bit of direction, it lacked a little bit of purpose, and because of that, it felt like it had a little bit of too much chaos in it, and that hurts the overall experience that this album puts forward. Once we go into favorite songs, it was really easy for me to pick these three tracks because to me they had enough in them, and they had like elements within them that really spoke to me that I gravitate to. Starting off with Sequential Descent, relentless opening. I really like the start of this track because it sets the tone for the song. It sets the tone for what this track is going to be all about, both musically and vocally. A very heavy track with drums and vocals working really well together to create that heaviness, to create that substance. The guitars come in more on the technical side and start to drive the track, start to give direction to the song, or at least it's trying to give direction to the song, but they still merging well with the overall robust experience, with the overall robust sound that this track has in store for the listener. Very heavy song from beginning all the way to the end. Next we have Captive Infinity. I like the acoustic opening. The only thing about this opening that I wish it would come back again at some later stages within the track. I'm not talking about the melody, I'm talking about the acoustic guitars themselves. I just feel like having them at the beginning, it really set a little bit of an expectation, at least as far as I'm concerned, for what this track could be, for where this track could go. It had a little bit of a prog touch, it had a little bit of a prog influence, and I just wish they went down that well a little bit deeper, because I felt like it would have made the song feel a little bit more complete overall. Having said that, I still like how this track sounds, I still like how this track flows. Once the heaviness comes in and those guitars disappear, it is a pungent song, it is a heavy track that just moves really well. It has some moments of clarity within it. It's not just heavy from beginning all the way to the end, and because of it, it would muddy the overall experience. No, there are some moments of clarity where you can understand exactly what's happening, where you perhaps can go up for air, catch a little bit of a breath before the onslaught returns. That is a very important element within this song. It really sets it apart and allows it to be as heavy as it is without really feeling like it just puts you through the grinder and at the end of it you're just tired of it. So those moments of clarity that this song has, specifically coming out more from the technical guitar side, really helps the overall way in which you consume this song. Last but not least, the Minion Eyes. A bit more vocally dynamic. I wouldn't say that this song goes all over the place vocally, but there's definitely some nuances within this track that really set it apart, and that's where you start to see the difference that this song has to offer compared to the previous two. It's really coming from the vocals. Those nuances are super important. The drums lay the groundwork, once again heavy. That's something that's super consistent throughout this record. They lay the groundwork for the track. The guitars feel a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more diverse, pushing in different directions, providing some breaks here and there, some spikes of brightness, if you will, but merging really well with the heaviness that's provided throughout the whole song by the drums and by the vocals as well. You can't forget that the vocals and drums really work well in parallel in order to pack as much heaviness and aggression as possible within these tracks. The midway point is really interesting because it shifts direction, it changes your approach of how you see this song, or how you listen to it. The track becomes a little bit more linear, becomes a little bit more straightforward, and that point in time becomes the reset of the track. It then returns back to how it started, it goes back to that familiar path, and it kind of feels like it's gone full circle. But that reset point in the middle of the song is super important so that the track doesn't become just another track that sounds like the previous track or sounds like the one that came after. That reset really breaks this track apart, really gives you something different sonically in order for you to really gravitate towards it, and it resets your perception of the track. And when you go back to the beginning, or when you go back to how the song sounded at the start, you feel like you're re-engaged with the song all over again. So I really like how they constructed and deliver this track. This is it. This is Ophidian with Desolate, out July 16th on Season of Mist. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.